Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Women's Empower Network. I am so excited to have Veronica with us. Her evening, my morning. No, reverse. Her morning, my evening. So, welcome,
Yeah,
Veronica.
thank you. Thank you so much. Definitely, although I'd like it to be evening and you morning, so it's all good.
Right, right. It's such an interesting phenomena. So,
Very, yeah.
the women can get to know you and myself. If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about your story and journey that led you to what you're passionate about today.
I guess I'm going to start when I was a little girl, and something in me decided that I wasn't going to burden anyone. So I remember having a broken arm at 3 at kindy, pre-kindy or something here in Australia. And I actually remember just do not show emotion, just hold your arm, don't make a big deal, be tough. Or not be tough, just be quiet and don't be seen or heard. And so that was my choice for whatever reason, protection, don't bother people. I've learned over the years it was not to burden. Don't cause more hassle in someone's life or make it worse. And it could have been my parents, watching them struggle or whatever it was. And I was like, don't add to it. And that just became, I guess, a path of it's about everybody else. How can I help? How can I please? What can I do? How can I give? And not to take too much and not to share too much and not to be in the way. So I think Mum always said, you just wanted a little book and some chips in a corner and I didn't see you the whole time, sort of thing. So it was an unconscious choice to not be seen, be heard, or, be anything. I'm not there. And I guess over time, most people I'm sure can understand that when you suppress, squash, diminish, lessen, something's got to give. And so there'd be spurts of wanting to voice. And of course, sometimes the voice was kind of angry and frustrated, and most people would be like, where did that come from? And so then I felt bad. And so you'd suppress again. So the hardest time I think came through parenting, as in, I should be better, I could be better, are these kids okay? And they were little. And I had a experience, I guess you would say, where I thought my imposter syndrome of being a mum, my inability, my dysfunction, because one child was pretty intense, the other one, kind of get pushed aside. They're only a couple of years apart. And one day I had them both kind of crying and all over the place. And my partner at the time came in and said, if you don't be careful, you're going to end up like my mum and my big brother, their relationship, which wasn't great as adults. And this hit me like an avalanche of, oh my gosh, my best friend realizes I'm false and fake. I'm a failure. All my secrets are out. And I literally remember sliding down the wall after he left and me having a little spit and anger attack and wanting to walk out, all just to suppress that, oh my gosh, I'm scared as hell. And you've realized I'm not doing this well. And I just remember falling down this wall, hitting a bottom that I thought I'd had all covered and padded and protected. And sadly, yeah, it brought out like real raw. I have issues that I am not aware of, I guess. Issues in the respect that people don't even know where I'm at, what I'm feeling and that sort of thing. And so that took me the journey of trying to fix me. But over 2 or 3 years, it's not a fix. It's a who am I? And so that took me in an awareness of, and it's funny, I was going to therapy at the time and I'd go, you've got to help me, you've got to fix me. I'm the problem. And they're like, I think you're missing a lot. And I'm like, no, just fix me. And it's so sad, that you think, I stuck myself in, the fix it box, and then of course you go through, I felt it was like a grieving, like a shock, an awareness, and then an anger, all the way to a uncaring, just I don't care, I can't do this anymore, which then turned into I don't even know who I am. And that was the journey of, gosh, if I don't know who I am, how can I be the best mum for my kids? How can I be a role model as a woman for my boys? And so that really shook me and thought, I don't have a choice. I chose to have these beautiful children. I need to be a higher version or truer version of myself. And who is that? I was literally leading by everybody else. And so, yeah, it took 2017 to really take, how would I find out who I am? Where do I start? What don't I know? So yeah, that was where it all started. That got me into beautiful coaching, coaching self. I literally did the breakthroughs and the transformations all to me. Full on lessons and classes of me going, oh my gosh, I had no idea, to wanting to desperately never have anyone slide down a wall that intensely and not even know what love is of the self or know who you are. And so that's how I've gotten to here, where I'm, yeah, twofold. I never want someone to fall and realize they don't have this unique, amazing space that they are allowed to hold on earth, to embracing themselves and all their uniqueness and their extraordinary values, whether it's ugly sometimes or kind, it doesn't matter. You come whole like a plant that has, blemished leaves, to, a kid that frustrates you. That love of the total is so important for ourselves, which then ripples out. So we're going to be a better nation if we love self, look in the mirror and be okay, willing to listen, willing to be quiet with ourselves. And that's just going to help humanity. So yeah, that's how I've come and gotten to here speaking to you, empowering women. So yes, thank you.
That's quite the journey and quite the story. And I just find it fascinating that at 3 years old, because we were talking about before we came live about this collective consciousness that is unspoken, but yet somehow, as well as all people, but we're all women here. So as women, that somehow we internalized it, that whatever your environment was encouraged you to not make a scene, do not have needs, do not voice your concerns or anything. And I like that you said, eventually it just kind of
A burst,
it's
and then you go, oh no, that's too much. Yeah, yeah.
like a
And I
teapot.
guess, yeah, and we're not really, sadly, education's very narrow and limited in its, you know, efforts, I guess. It's your maths, your this, your that. But really, if we could make better humans in school, as in, let's know you to get you to have a better way of speaking about things that you're interested in, or about how you understand things differently, and let's be open to it. So I think it's never really encouraged. I mean, certainly not in the era, of the 70s. We're talking, it was kind of like, you're a kid, you don't really have a say, rather than, wait on, you're a human. You've been allocated a space, a piece in this puzzle piece of life at the moment. Every stripe and color and voice and moment has a right to share. We shouldn't think that because what we think is better or worse. It's just there and present, but we're not encouraged that, I guess, enough. And so I never got guided to go, yeah, honey, what are you so quiet today? Is there anything you're feeling? Do you need to share? I'm going to be present with you. That just isn't suggested, guided, or encouraged. It's, I've got a cook, or I've got this phone call, or and so I didn't even have mobile phone issues then, but I had this unconscious thing of, it is better for everybody else if I don't necessarily exist, but don't take space, because that will burden others. And it took To be honest, what's really sad, Jenny, is it took a very long time. Like I'm thinking 20, even 3 years ago, I was still cautious of burdening. And it may have been on a much smaller scale, but it was still, I remember discussing my 50th, and it was the most heaviest weight to have people come to my 50th for me. And I remember speaking to another sister coach, and she said, Veronica, what is it? And I was feeling sick over it, trying to make this party happen for everybody. And I just couldn't. And in the end, I canceled because I just wasn't in a place to make it happen. I cancelled my 50th. That doesn't quite work, but I was like, not this year, right? And my friend, got me to realize it was burdening people. It was asking people to turn up for me. It was asking people to be, taking away something they might have and could have been doing and choosing me. And that was somewhat uncomfortable and somewhat, suffocating, and that could happen. And I realized, oh my gosh, all the work I have done, and that was still hovering somewhere in some cells, maybe around the 50th. But yeah, it's interesting. We're incredible creatures, it's like the most
Isn't
unique gem. Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. I mean, because there's this underlying script, and we can do all the work in the world, and that script is going to show up every now and then until we shift who we are completely, right? And it sounds like you have finally have done that.
Yeah, look, and it's funny, and we're talking now because I think and maybe this is why divine timing had to happen, because it is a wave, like we were sharing, catching those waves, but we catch it and go, okay, can I grow and learn and grasp it? Or will I get rolled up in the mess and the weed and the attack of it all? And the last year, so 2024, I went into, gung ho trying to renovate this home in the middle of, all sorts of things happening. But I did it in a haste and a pace that it wasn't, I didn't stop to think. So, you're studying, you're working, you've got kids, you're trying to renovate, you're dealing with tradies, you're not, there's no room in my brain, unconsciously about me. And so I rode last year like a nut on the worst, if we're talking surfing like we did about your son, on the worst board with no preparation, especially renovating. I'd never done it before. And I just got, one issue and problem after another, making decisions on my own about something I'd never done before. Then got thrown into an opportunity to go to America for some books that I was in. And I'm squeezing, ordering bathroom parts and kitchen parts and planning and all this about, I'm going to say 2-3 weeks before I left. Crazily went to America, drove on the opposite side of the road, half the time going, what am I doing? Going to 5 different places, catching way too many planes, getting stuck on LAX, you name it, it all just it kind of built up. It was like the worst dominoes effect, right? But I get back and I hit a collapse, but it was a collapse I wasn't even ready to look at. And it was actually, ironically, the same person around the burden. She's like, where are you at the moment? And I was like, well, I'm going to try and get to dancing, and I'm going to try and do this, and I'm going to try and do that. And I said, but I'm not, something doesn't feel right. And that just burst a pipe of tears. And she's like, what's that about? And I was like, I can't do anymore. And so for 3 months, Ginny, if I'm going to be honest, I had a version of collapse that lasted that long. I'm talking fetal, curled up, crying space, but not knowing why. And it took me probably 2 or so months to go, oh my gosh, if I'm 52 and have suppressed my feelings most of that lifetime, and I've just rattled myself so much through, transformations and efforts and care and meditation, whatever it took, And now the waterworks, the anger, everything I'd held back took hold. I didn't have a say. Those waves were coming, and I was either going riding with them or I was going to get squashed. And it's only been the last couple of weeks where I have full on, I guess, emptied all this stuff that I didn't even know was still there, but allowing myself, and then come to a place of pure trust and surrender on a level I didn't understand before. On a real, it's okay, it doesn't matter, I trust. So yeah, humanness is interesting.
It's the proverbial 4x4. Some of us have such strong personalities that it takes a lot to get our attention. I feel
Yes,
you.
totally. Mm.
But I'm glad. I mean, and I know probably in the midst of it, when you're crying, you're thinking, oh my God, this is never going to stop. I'm going to be crying for the rest of my life.
Especially when, I haven't cried for all my life, like very like, no, what are you crying for? That's just a waste. And of course it happens, but it's quick, shorten it, and we know nowadays, it's encouraged to feel. But if you've never done that before, and if that's so foreign to you, and if that feels weak, and, the worst, it doesn't show you as a strong, empowering coach, and, the last thing you do is want to show that side of you. But I have realized that that was part of, I'm going to say, I guess, the medicine woman that I needed to step into, the witch doctor on a different level within myself, and to allow a different version of healing. It's like different levels, a depth. And so I'm grateful, but yeah, at the time it's a shock. It's, is there something wrong? But yeah,
But
suppressing something isn't healthy.
no, but isn't that interesting that a lot of us associate crying with weakness, which is exactly what men are taught. If you cry, you're
Yeah,
weak. And it's like we took on that quote unquote, I'll call it male energy, that
yeah,
masculine energy, and that somehow we're told we're not to feel, that's so incredibly important to know that you are more powerful when you allow yourself, because we're humans in this human experience, to experience all these emotions, and yet everything that we're being taught is they're not good, or this one's good and this one's bad, and don't show, don't cry in public, and you'll be weak if you cry, and all of this. So it takes tremendous trust and courage, and like you said, you didn't have a choice, or you get to a place where it's happening.
yeah. It's ugly. Yes.
It
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
I do, and what's interesting, and it's really kind of sad, is my own sister, who had a lot of tragedies when she was young. She never cried, and she suppressed it with alcohol and cigarettes. And she says, I'm afraid that if I start crying, I will never stop. And
yeah.
that's, but it's not true, is it? It's just not true.
No, look, I mean, if we look at time that I'd suppressed and how long it took, no, it was, pretty cool. It's kind of short and sweet.
Right,
At the
50
time,
years and 3 months. Hey, that's pretty damn good.
it's probably an intense journey in the 3 months, but do you know, I think what we don't allow as well is to get in the core of feeling without an explanation, I guess. I think that is the difference. Like we tend to want to like, oh, I feel hurt, or I feel anger, or I feel something. But really, it doesn't matter whether we place a name or a label or why or what. I think it's the permission and allowance to something's happening. I'm erupting. I'm soothing. I'm now erupting again. I guess like a kid, there are some times where you can see that moment where they're just crying and you just hold. So it's like you're going to self-hold and just let the waves and the intensity come and go. And they're like happy. And then all of a sudden, and I think it took me a little bit to just go, Veronica, I don't know what's happening, but I think and everything in me tells me this has got to happen because otherwise it's going to keep squeezing out when you're trying to suppress it. And so I just had to let go. And it's funny, we're talking about that beautiful timing again. I guess if I look at it, my energy and frequency was I'm ready. And then, my kids could be somehow were away for 2 weeks or a week. And the New Year's, I didn't have to go anywhere and everything kind of stopped at that period of time. So I was like, I don't have to be anywhere. Like everything says this is allowed. And so I had nothing to do, nowhere to go, no schedules. Everything was kind of down anyway. There is no excuse, and I accepted the journey that I was about to unfold. I journaled a lot, I sat a lot, but again, no, not needing to know why, what, or where, just what was coming out, and being okay with whatever I felt I needed to, release, I guess. But yeah, definitely not easy to say yes to, but it's a yes that I think is inevitable for our highest love version, to be honest.
Well, you were finally saying yes to you and allowing yourself to be whatever wanted to be. And
Yeah,
that's
on a
beautiful.
level, yeah, totally different to what I'd ever done before, or anyone let me do before. And I think, yeah, I think it's important. We all just allow. We're not going to be perfect forever, and even striving for perfect is unfair because each individual has a version of perfect. So if you're trying to reach perfect, are you reaching your perfect, your mum's perfect, your aunties, your neighbors? Like it's impossible to, it's that never ending grasping to something that doesn't exist. And so I kind of say, if you're going to reach a perfect, reach your version and be at peace with it, but know what your version is, don't do everybody else's that you've taken up all your life, It's like, I think that was mine. No, actually, that was, so I think that's why I'm so passionate about self-love and self-acceptance, because you can't possibly do you without figuring out who you are, then accepting every part of you, also taking responsibility for you. So you can't sit in, it's not fair. You just like, okay, it's a learning path. And then, tapping into that inner intuition that we don't trust, and then sit in awe. I mean, what better path to self can there be? And so, yeah, I get excited that it's happening more and more, that this permission to fill our own well by loving ourselves so we can share it with others, especially women. We're giving constantly. It's an outpour. The tap and the faucets are broken. We need some plumber to, like cap those things. So we can go, oh, hang on, I can't actually give today. And that's okay. I'm going to maybe pause, replenish, renew my well about me. So then I can give more on a nurturing and more empowering space.
That's
Definitely.
so beautiful. I had a thought come up in the middle of it, but then it kind of slipped away, and I'm like, darn.
Yeah. We trust.
But something beautiful you said that I really do want to point out is that you finally got to a place where you realized you didn't need to label what was happening. All your job to do was just to feel it.
Yeah. I mean, part of my coaching anyway goes into sort of some energy work and some inner listening. And I feel that this was kind of, entranced in a little bit more of that, in the respect that, okay, I want to cry, or something is erupting, or sometimes it might have been just a sensorial space, sensations, and it would cause an emotion, like I guess a joy or a sadness or a something, like, just, I can't explain it. It was like a welling up, and I guess a sense of grieving, in a puddle of lots of feelings. But instead of like shunning the senses, I'd be like open to the senses. I'd be like, oh, what's that? Why did that sea breeze on my skin make me want to cry? And then allow the cry and allow the feeling even more. Or let me feel it again, rather than, oh, that was weird and I don't know what that is, and let's distract, or take up
Right.
some action. Yeah. Deter, avoid, instead I just chose to sit in it. And I guess, like, if we're going, as much as we want to be the highest version of ourselves, we want to be the highest version as a human, right? We want to connect to that beautiful higher source and soul, but we don't want to lose this blessing of feeling and hearing and tasting and touching and, the whole senses. So it's embracing humanness on this higher level and allowing that I get to waste time or take up time to feel whatever's happening. And, me being the kid who thought everything was burdening others, probably even burdening myself, had shaken up to go, no, this isn't burdening, this is allowed, and you're worthy, of taking this time. So yes, I think
That's
feeling,
important.
yeah.
The worthiness. I have a question for you though. Pre the emotional breakdown or whatever it is that you want to call it, the release, do you feel like you're more sensitive to your intuition or messages than before when you were shut down and in the doing phase? Or
It's a beautiful question.
did you always have kind of a connection?
I I would say I had the connection, but I didn't know it. And so, especially, I think, as I was sharing, I think I suppressed even, but I don't have a say. That was it. Even what you're thinking and feeling, you need to shush, for safety or whatever it was. And over time, especially the last 7, 8 years, that I really stepped into, I'm allowed, I'm worthy, I'm enough, path took a while. Yes, I began to trust, oh, I have a message. Let me hear it. Let me listen to it. I feel now it is more in the respect that I'm giving it more time, and possibly different time. So if I'm doing my, meditation, or I'm doing a breath work, which is really, I think, the biggest rattling I had to release. The breath work was why I went to America for that particular book. But I think the, good 3 months before that, I was practicing it. And that, I think, began the breaking of cages, that I had locked and shut and wound up and torn and twisted, and do not let anyone in and do not let anything out. Breathwork shapes, our breathworks are like, wow, right? So I think now what's happening is I'm giving it more space. I'm giving my inner voice more space to pause, reflect, and then let me take from it. So I think it's like a different, like, sounding board and a different way I'm connecting to it. But I do think we all have it. I just think life gets so cloudy and crowded and noisy, as they say nowadays. And I mean, look at us, it's constant numbers and social media, like, it's a lot. I have really changed my patterning. I'm hardly on the phone anymore. Like, I just was like, what kind of presence do I want to have for my life? And it's more on the water, it's more in the garden, it's more just catching colors of the sky. I dragonfly was gold the other day. I'm like really just pausing. And so I'm getting more of me, more of life. I talked to strangers way more, and it's a lot of life enhancing space. And I do believe it's because I've opened up, I guess, my internal portal to know what works best for me. So yeah, I think it has shifted and changed.
That's beautiful. It's, clearly there's a difference between the go, 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 do, you know, force, make this happen versus more allowing and kind of
Mm.
flowing with what you're feeling. And you're probably getting even more done because there's more ease to it than when you were trying to force it.
Yeah, it is so funny you say that. The efficiency is even unconscious. Like I remember this last kind of 2 weeks has been, the early of it was, you know what, I just don't care anymore. I can't function on the level I was pushing myself. Like, I did the outpour of emotions. The outpour of emotions went, I'm so done. Whatever, just whatever. I don't have anything left. And I'm finding like, God, dude, I have that happen because I'm not having, I have to, I should, I didn't do enough. Why? The pressure has so, I have literally gone, I don't care in the have tos. And sadly, because I think what we have is a very intense, multi-level expectations of how we need to function. So I didn't even realize that I had this, I need to have the house finished because at this time, because, and it probably was based on, because I don't know, someone said once they did it in 2 minutes or whatever, right? And so I had this story I was sitting in, slowly killing myself. I mean, it's a miracle I didn't get sick. I truly believe it was the ocean fix every, twice a day. And lucky I was listening. I'd be like to my boys, dudes, dinner's half done, but I need to get to that water now. Like, you either finish or wait till I come back. And lucky it's around the corner, but they're like, okay, it's all good. But it was, I needed to go, and I did not let anything get in the way, even middle of cooking. And I lost my train of thought. I apologize. I got passionate, but yeah, it was this go, go, go gets in the way. And now it doesn't matter. Like, I don't have a teacher telling me if you don't finish this in time, you won't get an A+. I don't have a dad saying you're going to be, this if you don't finish your dinner. And so I'm realizing a lot of this pressure was not even relevant, and I was living by it. And I think that's how most of us live. And I think I've got this most beautiful person I follow, Dr. Zach Bush. I got to meet him. I don't know if you know, he's an incredible being. If anyone wants to know how to connect to self plus the world, he's the one. But I remember him talking a lot about people dying, their last words, because he's a doctor and did a lot of, end of time space. I'm trying to think of the word, but, it was all about presence, acceptance. They came back from the light with, I just felt accepted. I just felt like, I didn't need to do, be, and have. It was just this pureness. And I think we get carried away with all these crazy expectations. And if this was your last week, would it have been that you finished your to-do list, or you sat down and had a crazy laugh with an old friend, or listened to a child you don't even know, but their excitement about the rock they found? Like, this is what life's about. It isn't about how many likes or how much I finish a house in a certain time. There's so much more, and we're missing it. And that's where I'm grateful I finally got on this journey of self, to look at the whole existence of the world. So yeah,
You know,
definitely no
that's
more to-do
beautiful.
lists.
And I'm curious how many women were the prior version of you that are hearing this now, and maybe they're hearing it for the first time, you know, that, and why are you doing what you're doing? Why, asking yourself, why does it seem so important? And taking a step back and getting a perspective. Um, and I think part of it is the natural evolution of our own personal growth. It's kind of like, it's a funny correlation, but it's like looking at a puppy. I don't care what breed of dog it is, they all go through the chewing phase, and they all, poop on the floor. You know and I think as humans, we go through these same phases, when we get to a place, in our 50s, where we start taking a step back and going, I don't care. And it's not saying like you
Yeah.
don't care about anything. You just realize you don't care about those things that were actually harming you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And even like individual dogs take a different timing to get trained out of some stuff, and I guess I call it the university of life. We're taking courses constantly, and do we pass that test with that relationship, with that, best friend that didn't quite line up, that, that job that you thought. These are pure courses that we're given. How are we getting, we're getting tested through it. Are we going to accept that lesson, or is it going to take a few times? And I guess you and I are both here to go, hey, did you miss that lesson? Because if I can help you catch it earlier, you don't have to do it several times. Um, yeah, and I do believe we need to go through some, fall to the ground outburst of anger and tears. But how many times, I guess, is necessary before we think we're worthy enough to listen, to that inner voice, to that inner feeling, and be okay to choose to make a change. Because otherwise, you do hit that deathbed, and you wonder why you worried about, what was in even the bank account. Like, we do put a lot of pressure on stuff. And imagine if we embraced what we did get, be grateful for what we do have, rather than what we don't, and what we, it's not fair, or, so I kind of think, and if we're talking about that, the other thing which is interesting is energy. You wake up in the morning with a portion of energy. We think it's endless, but it's not. And that's why we get that lull in the afternoon. But if we can use that gorgeous energy for the good of us, good of others, you're going to last longer. You're going to have a more healing path. You're going to be less sick, less ailments, less issues. Um, you know, Embracing and being grateful for the energy that we are given every day, every year. So yeah, it's a lot of things, but yet it's simple. So it's kind of
Right?
beautiful.
Or it's simple, but it's not always necessarily easy.
Yeah, definitely.
So from there, let's talk a little bit about what you do today. What are you passionate about? What brings us together?
Well, I mean, together, I think it's several things. I feel now we've kind of probably really aligned. I Yes, it would definitely be. If we're going to spin it on a story, it's how the beautiful different ways we can share our story and be safe to share it. And so, whether it's my writing, whether it's my coaching, whether it's, in, a time like this where we're connecting, or my circles that I'm doing, it's a place to go, I'm allowed to show up, I'm allowed to be me, and I'm allowed to express that in whatever way at the moment, which is going to get me to the next stage. So I was blessed to find a coaching group and company that helped me break my cage. And then in turn through that, and yeah, it was it was raw. I went to Sydney to do it for a week way back when we weren't doing so many Zooms. And so that was extraordinary being, in people's energies of evolution. Um, and so that got me into going, how can I help others be okay to listen to themselves and feel that what they have to say, what they're feeling, what they're not feeling is okay. And so that got me onto the self-love facilitator, I'm going to say, and guider, because I can't tell anyone how to self-love. I can guide and encourage, I can give tips, but you get to love the beautiful being you are. And that's just heaven on earth. And then through that, I really believe I did a beautiful breath work through the book launch I went to. And this just made me realize, and it was beautiful. I had all these women come to me, like a past auntie and a past great auntie and, a grandma. And they just like arrived and said, you are the guide for people to build themselves up so they can rise, so others can build and rise. So what came was, it's a ripple effect. It is no joke. Like who you are, who I am now, I can see in my children. They're like, I couldn't have these difficult conversations if it wasn't for you. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you did the difficult conversations. I saw you and heard you, and now I'm doing them. I'm like, wow. I had no idea I went there and you picked that up. And I couldn't have done the difficult conversations if I hadn't gone, I'm allowed. So yeah, that's my path. It's helping people build, either remove what they've already built to build foundations of self so they can rise, they can have the voice, they can share their story, they can write their story, they can, pick up a new business, create a new item, flourish some way, and then they can help others build. So we're all rising. This earth, is waiting for us to seed all these gorgeous and sprout all these gorgeous ideas. So that's been, my journey. And then I guess writing was a way that I had suppressed for so long. Yet it's so weird. I used to write stories for school, and all of a sudden Veronica had a voice. But because I was like, don't worry about it, just here, you look at it, don't tell anyone. And then I found that everyone would give me their cards. Can you write the card to mum? You're better at writing. So that kind of slowly. So I was writing pages. I'm like, I'm going to read it later. Thanks, Veronica. And then I was blessed. I was blessed to arrive at a workshop trying to find out who I was. And it was a free workshop. And this woman was a mum of 6 kids who had published so many books and, had these epiphanies to write stories. And I was like, oh my gosh, who and how are you to do this? We're gorgeous friends now. And she offered me to be a part of one book. And that story, I realized, was a fake story. But when someone had read it who knew me, went, oh my gosh, this is all about you. And I was like, what? No, it's about a girl in the 40s at World War II. And they're like, no. And when I reread it, I realized, oh, damn, it was called Freedom. And it was my escape, or my freedom of all I had trapped myself in through this beautiful story. And so writing has become another way I can voice, through my posts, helping people to look at things differently, themselves differently. I really think it's a shift in perspective and perception about self that'll help us get closer to loving who we are. So my passion is rattling the world for each individual to shine brighter because they are happy to look in that mirror and accept who they are. And
That's so
feel gratitude.
beautiful, Veronica. I love that. So, if people are resonating with your story and really energetically connecting with you, how can they get in touch with you?
I love personal messages. I am a one-on-one. I want to eat our conversation. I want to taste it. I want to get real. So if anyone wants to, even just a chat, like I don't expect anything from it. I would love to hear their story. But anyway, my name's Veronica Galipo, and it's any Instagram, Facebook, my websites, all that sort of thing. Obviously through you. And yeah, I will say as well, it's actually this Saturday, if anyone's interested, I'm holding once a month free turn up online, and I am guiding souls, ideally women at the moment, but I know we as humans need to tap into ourselves. And I just encourage through journal prompts or tools that I've gained over time, especially practice tools that I've done on myself that have gotten me to get to know who I am. So it's an hour and a half at the moment, 11 a.m. West Australian Western Standard Time in Perth, WA. But so I've had people from Canada, America, India, like a few handful of, different areas, definitely Australia. And literally, you don't have to say anything, although gorgeous, obviously, circles help to share. But it's me just going, hey, today we're going to look at beliefs. So I want you to pick a belief that may be holding you back, how to find that, and then going through a process to look at it a different way so we can start, because I do a lot of mindset work, we can start that brain to loosen what we're holding on to give us better outcomes. So, beliefs, energy work, grounding, journaling, presence, listening in, being okay with doing nothing. Yeah, I think a lot of us do not know how to sit still and be okay with nothing, no anything to distract. It's a beautiful place to feel the breath deeper. I mean, I went to what was she? She was a cranial sacral, and I was getting some chest pains, and she's like, what have you been doing? And I was like, I don't know. She's like, you're not breathing at the back. You're not using your whole diaphragm. And I think it was all that stress over that year of just like do that I wasn't going deep. And it is sad. We're not even taught to breathe properly for our body to function at our highest space so we can have this wonderful life. So these are the practices I'm encouraging. But yeah, I just love human connection. It is the most healing space. So anytime anyone wants to share, connect, I would love to hear from them. So please, I look
I
forward to
love
it.
that. Well, we'll be sure to put all this information about this interview and down in the comments so that you can connect with Veronica. And I can't thank you enough for being vulnerable and allowing us to see you and love you as you are, perfectly imperfect. And
Perfectly perfect.
that's what we are. And so before we leave today, are there any parting words of wisdom that you would like to share with us?
Ooh. You know what? What started me on my journey was the one thing that I think helped me come out of the darkness. And that was finding something you're grateful for. And I'm not saying externally, I'm saying find something in you. And I will share. I started with my toes. Like, I know that's crazy, but I was in the shower crying. This is many moons ago. And I was like, this is exhausting. I'm not doing well. And what can I see that's kind of nice? And I was like, I have pretty toes, kind of thing. It was like ridiculous. I have the smallest feet, and I was like, oh my God, something in me is of worth. And then what I would say, because I've learned over time, it might be something like you're kind to people, or you're a beautiful baker, or you know how to arrange flowers. It doesn't really matter. Or you sleep quickly, or you have a beautiful hair. It doesn't matter. Pick one thing and then sit down and go, why am I grateful about it? Because knowing why is a deeper concept of who you are. Because let's say me, I love the ocean. I'm grateful for my passion of the ocean. But if we go deeper, why the ocean? What does the ocean mean to me? And ultimately, it is vast. It is forever. It is a sense of freedom. It is choppy and calm. It is everything and exclusive. And I embrace it all. And I was like, whoa, if that's why I love the ocean, then that's in me. And so going deeper into a why you are grateful for something in you is going to shine light on where we don't think is not enough or not worthy or needs more because it isn't enough. So I would say that is my one takeaway. Start being grateful about you on some level, and then why are you grateful?
That is so beautiful. And with that, I just thank you so much for your time and sharing your presence with us. And I look forward to seeing more of you.
Awesome. Me too, Jenny. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Seriously, just take a moment to embrace who you are. Awesome. I look forward to hearing and speaking to anyone who's willing to chat. Thank you.